Donald Trump is being used to fulfill Bible prophecy. His relationship with Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu is unlike any other president, and with all of the end times prophecies, like 99% of them, focusing on Israel and Jerusalem in the last days, Donald Trump is clearly paving the way for them to all unfold, with the nations gathered together against Israel and Jerusalem, with the peace and the third temple. And we'll even hear it from Benjamin Netanyahu himself that no other president has done the things that Donald Trump has for Israel. So we'll take a look at this video first, and then we'll look at what a video that's claiming to be a third temple update as well as a red heifer update. But some of the information is old, but we'll look through it because all of this fits in together. So this first clip that we'll look at is from a video titled "How Trump's Israel Update Proves Jesus is on the Way. The Temple Prophecy is Coming" on the AOC Network YouTube channel.
Will now be able to find completion.
Before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. In your first term, you recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You moved the American embassy there. You recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And of course, you also brokered the groundbreaking Abraham Accords in which Israel made peace with 4 Arab states. Now, in the first days of your second term, you picked up.
So all of those things paved the way for multiple prophecies to unfold, mainly the fact of making Jerusalem the capital of Israel, with moving the embassy, the United States embassy there, because again, in the Old Testament, multiple prophecies in Zechariah, in Daniel, I believe, and then Jesus reaffirms this in Matthew 24, and in the book of Revelation, we know that armies are gathered together against Jerusalem, and in the Great Tribulation, things will get so bad that people who live in Judea, when they have to flee to the mountains, they're not told to even grab their coat because the emergency is so immediate. And this, with the focus on Jerusalem, making it the center focus of Israel and the main focus of like almost the entire world, really sets the stage for those prophecies to unfold, as well as the peace plans that are being set up as well, because the unrest will continue in the Middle East. And as it does, it'll get to a point to where when the Antichrist is on the scene, he will come in and finally bring peace for 3.5 years. This is during the Great Tribulation as well. And we're just seeing these different moves moving in that direction. And even the plan that's set up for the Middle East is called the Peace and Security National Committee, or the Committee of Peace and Security, set up by Jared Kushner. And in the Bible, it says, when they cry out for peace and safety, then comes sudden destruction. So it's very biblical what's happening. It's very prophetic. And again, Donald Trump is definitely being used for this purpose, which is why we saw him survive being shot, which is why we saw him with a massive landslide, because no other president would have set up Israel to this level like he has. And it's definitely prophetic in a lot of different ways.
Right where you left off, right where you left off. The Bible says that the people of Israel shall rise like lions, and boy did we rise.
I just want to point something out when he says that. Benjamin Netanyahu says that in the Bible when they say this, and then the lady who's the keeper of the red heifer, she also mentioned that when she's being interviewed by these Christian organizations. In the Bible, it says this, and then every verse that they refer to is the Old Testament, because they only, obviously the Jews, they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. They only believe in the Old Testament. And then they use that wordage of the Bible to make it sound like, oh, well, we're all believing the same thing. Well, we as Christians do. We believe the Old Testament is the truth and the word of God. But the Jewish people are missing out on the most important part of the Bible. So I don't know why they refer to it as the Bible when we have the true Bible as Christians, and they're missing like the saving gospel of Jesus Christ. So hopefully they'll come to terms with that and accept Jesus soon. But as we know, things are going to escalate. All of this will unfold, and then the Jewish people will finally look upon the one whom they pierced, Jesus Christ, and say, well, it only could be him. It's shocking how someone who could study the Old Testament like the Jewish people and not see that it's Jesus. It's extremely obvious that he's the Messiah.
Today, the roar of the Lion of Judah is heard loudly throughout the Middle East.
with the entire world focused on Israel, again, such a small nation. Obviously, this is playing into Bible prophecy, again, proving that the Bible is real because the entire world is constantly focused on Israel. That's no coincidence. And we're even seeing a prophetic stage being set up with Donald Trump saying that we are going to take over Gaza, will own it. The United States will own it. What is this actually setting up? Because this has bigger implications. And he's saying this in front of Benjamin Netanyahu, who has no pushback at all. So clearly something is unfolding through all of this, something a lot bigger than just the United States helping an ally.
And amazingly, it was not contested by the prime minister at all. No, in fact, it was wanted.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent.
So just an overview before we watch this Third Temple update and Red Heifer update that has been being posted kind of all over the place lately, and see what information is new and just how it's all unfolding with what's actually going on in Israel. So we're seeing peace and safety rising in the middle in Israel. We're seeing Jerusalem being the center focus, Israel being the center focus. This plays in with all the Bible prophecies. All of this is going to happen. Zechariah prophesies that the nations will be gathered together against Israel, and the one who actually brings true peace will not be the Antichrist who sets up his false peace, but Jesus Christ when he comes back to Mount Zion and comes back to deliver the world. And the Jewish people finally realize Jesus is the Messiah, and he brings New Jerusalem in the place of Old Jerusalem. There's going to be 4 temples in total. We're waiting now for the 3rd temple, which will fulfill multiple prophecies, but there will eventually be the 4th temple, the temple that comes down from heaven, which will be in New Jerusalem, in the new heavens and the new earth, and it will be the one that finally lasts forever when we have true peace on the earth, when we have the true king reigning over all of us, King Jesus Christ. So let's take a look at this video. Again, this has been kind of posted all over the place. There's some clips that are not super well known in here, but some of these are a little older, but all of this is relevant for what we're seeing going on right now in the Middle East. The stage is being set for the 3rd temple to be built with everything that's changing now in Israel with all of Donald Trump's help right now. Definitely a prophetic thing taking place. And the potential for a 3rd temple being built in the next 4 years is probably the highest it's ever been since the last one was destroyed in 70 AD. So let's take a look at this video here.
That very soon we will all see the building of the 3rd temple in Jerusalem.
The table of showbread is ready. The menorah is ready. All of the golden pieces are ready.
This is true. I mean, I've talked about this a lot and pointed it out a lot. The artifacts, or not the artifacts, but the articles and the temple instruments that are going to be used within the 3rd temple are already built. You can even go see them in bulletproof glass cases in Israel. They've got them on display, like the big menorah. So when people say, oh no, the temple's our body, the Antichrist is going to somehow stand within our body and declare to be God, doesn't make sense. Then why, I mean, maybe there would be an argument to try to be made if there was no other evidence that the physical 3rd temple was actually in the process of trying to be built. But what do we see taking place in the earth? They literally have everything that's going to be going into the temple. There's even some groups, I think there's videos in here, of Jewish people who are carving the stones to start to build the temple when it's ready to be built. Everything is moving for this 3rd temple to be built. It's going to bring 3.5 years of peace, and then the Antichrist will ultimately break that peace, and then the Great Tribulation takes place on the earth. So the moves are being made for the 3rd temple to be built.
The 3rd temple is ready.
Our job to bring and to build the 3rd temple.
They're also planning to slaughter 5 red cows. That paves the way for the building of the 3rd temple, replacing the Dome of the Rock.
The Zionist Jews have announced many times that they...
It actually doesn't have to replace the Dome of the Rock. They could build it somewhere else. But we'll see how it takes place, especially with different moves in the earth of kind of like all the religions coming together, especially when we know the Antichrist will declare to be God in this temple. And so the possibility of the nations all coming together and just agreeing to build a third temple where all people can go and worship, that's a very real possibility.
They would build the third temple on the Temple Mount. But this year, they are dead serious about it. The red heifers imported from Texas in 2022 are now 3 years old, which means they are ready for a purification ritual according to the Torah. This makes them eligible for the ceremony needed for the third temple preparation. But why the Jews are very silent about it? Well, actually, they're not silent. The leak information from the Temple Institute officials, the red heifer ceremony will take place in the Passover holiday 2025. Just recently, the Sanhedrin, a Jewish religious authority, has called all Jews around the world to return to the Holy Land, and they should be ready to build the third temple.
And we have passed that all Jews around the world have an obligation, I feel right now, to do whatever is in their power to come to Eretz Israel, and that is the mitzvah of the Torah, and that is...
The Sanhedrin has also called for global participation in the rebuilding of the third temple. They have reached out to world leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin and the current US President Donald Trump, urging them to support the rebuilding the third temple. Not only that, the Sanhedrin has reached out to the Arab world, especially those descended from Ishmael, inviting them to join in the rebuilding of the third temple.
Even Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia, he's making kind of moves and statements where it's kind of like setting the stage for the Jewish people to maybe gain back control of the Temple Mount, saying things that like Mecca is more important than Jerusalem. Jerusalem isn't really even mentioned in the Quran. It's just something that Islam decided to take over because obviously being guided by Satan, he wanted to destroy and create as much conflict in the earth as possible. So they set their sights on Jerusalem, like everyone has through all of history pretty much. But we are seeing that from the Arab world as well as also from some of the Western nations like the United States. Clearly these things are in the process of being set up for sure.
This invitation is inspired by Isaiah's prophecy, which says the sons of Ishmael will bring gifts and support the temple's construction. But the Arab world didn't respond very well. The relationship between Arab countries and Israel has been quite strained recently. Even countries that had normalized relations with Israel, like the UAE, are facing internal and regional pressure due to the ongoing conflict. However, the construction of Third Temple had actually begun months ago in secret, but they did not expose it.
So that clip was from a couple years ago, actually, of this guy carving the stones for the third temple. Again, showing that they're really doing whatever they can to have this thing be built. And then other Jewish leaders have, since then, also been going out, carving stones, doing what they can to prepare for the third temple. I mean, really doing everything that they possibly can. Whenever they decide to actually do it, they could literally probably do it within, I mean, I've heard like in a month or two. So, I mean, in a very short period of time, this could come upon the earth and things could change really big, really fast.
On the internet. They have learned that since they brought 5 red heifer to the Holy Land, they have captured the attention of Muslim, not only in Palestine and Middle East, but also around the world. The Sanhedrin believes that the construction of the third temple is a divine commandment prescribed by the Torah. According to their interpretation, this commandment is not merely a historical or symbolic aspiration, but an active and obligatory duty for the Jewish people.
Which is why it's such a prophetically big deal to see all of this taking place, because we know in 2 Thessalonians, the Antichrist declares to be God in the third temple, and you can't have the third temple be built without being purified by the red heifers, which hasn't happened for like over 1,000 years, over almost 2,000 years, actually. And so the fact that they actually have a qualifying red heifers at the moment, to which they haven't had, I mean, thousands, something that hasn't happened for thousands of years, clearly we're seeing these things being moved into place. I'm not sure how accurate that statement was about it taking the red heifer ceremony taking place at Passover in 2025. They say a few of the red heifers have been disqualified and they're gone there. There's like 3 now there. And they say 2 of them have been gone. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a ceremony in private, because again, how many people would wait for 2,000 years and then have them ready and then just say, well, we'll wait for a better time. That doesn't make any sense. But I think a public display, or at least a public revealing that this has been done, will probably come maybe this year, and maybe for sure in the next few years, I would imagine. Kind of hard to imagine that it would go much longer than that.
Rabbi Hillel Weiss, the spokesman of the Sanhedrin, explained the reasons behind their letter. He emphasized that they are not asking for money or permission from any government. Building the temple is a commandment from the Torah for the Jews. Rabbi Weiss mentioned that the invitation is not about politics or religion, but about being ready to serve God. In the last 5 years, Jews have made very significant progress in preparing for the construction of the third temple. They have found red heifers, and right now they are 3 years old, which are ready to be sacrificed. This achievement represents a crucial milestone in third temple preparations, as the ashes of a red heifer are essential for purifying both the temple site and the priests who will serve in the temple. The Temple Institute has taken a big step forward by creating a replica of the Ark of the Covenant based on biblical instructions. It's made of acacia wood covered with gold and has golden rings for carrying poles.
I made a video on this on my main channel, Sling and Stone, where they made this exact replica of the Ark of the Covenant. But it was pretty weird how they actually discussed this ark when people who talked about it, who built on it, who were working with it, and who were bringing it to different locations to put it on display, the way they talked about it was almost as if they believed it had some sort of power similar to the first Ark of the Covenant, which was brought into multiple wars, was carried around Jericho, and the walls came down. The Israelites would carry the first ark with them around all the time, really, a lot of times into battle. And they even said with this replica that they wanted to bring it to the front lines of the war that started on October 7th. And they were actually doing what they could to try to bring it there because they wanted Israel to gain power and their armies to gain strength from this ark. So it's pretty weird how they're even acting as if this thing had the power that the first Ark of the Covenant had. Again, we're not hearing much more about this. These things come out and then they kind of go away, which shows that there's probably something more going on behind the scenes. But it was very strange to read multiple occurrences of them talking about this thing as if it had similar powers as the first Ark of the Covenant.
17 volunteers from different countries built it in 3.5 years. This replica shows their dedication to restoring the temple and sticking to biblical guidelines. A group of religious Israelis have recently been pictured practicing the ritual of the red heifer in front of Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is seen as a provocative gesture, as it symbolizes.
This image was that where they're discussing what they would do, but they didn't practice the exact ceremony. The exact ceremony would have, I'm sure, quite a lot of qualifications, as the Jews, they really follow strict, laws of washing of hands, this utensil, that utensil, this person, that person, the guy who's going to be the priest for the third temple, who will be purified with the ashes from the red heifer, can't have even been in a hospital or walked through a cemetery. So just the level of laws and rules and regulations that they have to have in place are like tremendous.
The red heifer in front of Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is seen as a provocative gesture, as it symbolizes the intention to build a new Jewish temple on the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque. The determination to rebuild the third temple is deeply rooted in Jewish faith and tradition, much like the story of Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac as an act of obedience to God. The question remains, can the Jews finish building the third temple by the end of 2025? Leave in the comment.
Well, we'll definitely see. And again, we are definitely seeing the stage being set for these prophecies to take place again. The more you study end times prophecy and you really read everything that's going to happen, the majority of every prophecy that's mentioned is focused on whatever is happening in Israel and in Jerusalem, with the level of peace, with the peace and security, with the Antichrist, with the Great Tribulation. But then when the Great Tribulation actually does unfold, we do see worldwide events taking place, and whether the Christians of the earth are actually here for this part of it, not totally sure, because when God's wrath is poured out, Christians will not be here. Maybe the 144,000 sealed with the seal of God who are actually protected from all that will be, but we know that like a third of the sea will be destroyed, and sea life will die. The waters will be turned to blood. A third of the ships will be destroyed. I mean, these are huge worldwide events that will take place. But again, none of these things can take place until all these other things are starting to unfold. They all kind of are happening together. And just the fact that we're seeing the peace coming to the Middle East, we're seeing all the things that Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are doing to set the stage for this stuff, is for sure showing The Bible is real. Prophecy is unfolding exactly how the Bible said it would. We don't know the timeline, but I think that we're starting to see these things really be moved into place, and the potential for the red heifer sacrifice to start the building of the third temple. Absolutely, that stuff could start to be in motion this year, and it looks like this stuff is already in motion as of right now. So the most important thing is to just trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the Messiah. He's the Christ. It's in his name. It's extremely obvious when you study the Old Testament prophecies that Jesus came to be the salvation to the Jews and the Gentiles in their own prophecies. He's there. He's the Messiah for the Gentiles as well. So I don't know why they're so rude to the Christians who come and visit Israel. Very strange. They clearly don't study the scriptures like they're supposed to. Their eyes are shielded and darkened, and they're blinded to the truth, and their hearts are hardened, and they will eventually wake up to this truth. And that's our cry for them, because they are the original grafted branch. Romans tells us to desire for them to be brought in, because how much greater will things be when the original branch comes to believe in the truth, just like how we grafted in as Gentiles believe in the branch in the Lord Jesus Christ as Messiah. So that's our prayer for the Jewish people and for all the world. And definitely the time is now to believe in him, because things are moving fast and anything can happen. So I hope and pray you've made Jesus the Lord of your life. And I hope and pray you're well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and God bless.